Welcome to the Chabad event honoring the life and legacy of Rebitzin Chaya Mushka. It's a big honor and Shlichus to be standing up here at this event. I would like to thank the organizers of Neshei Chabad, Mrs. Spritzer and Mrs. Light, for arranging these beautiful Neshei Chabad events that are so inspiring and beautiful for our community. Although most of us never met the Rebitzin in person, all of us here in the room may have a sister, a daughter, a friend, or may even be privileged to bear the name. I am humbled myself to have a daughter named Chaya Mushka. We all know the famous story of a child visiting the Rebitzin in her home and innocently asking, "Rebitzin, where are your children?" And the Rebitzin replied, "My children are in 770. Looking around this room, 34 years later, after Chaf B'Shvat, we can say, Rebitzin, your children are here, right here, 34 years later. It's a big honor and privilege to call up Mrs. Rivka Lipsker to say the Rebbe and Rebetzin's kapitel.
Please rise. Shir Hamaylos El Adonai Batzoroso Li Korosi Vayaneni. Adonai Hatzilo Nafshi Misva Sheker Miloshon Remio. Ma Yiten Lecho Uma Yosif Loch Loshon Remio. Chitze Gibo Shenunim Im Gachale Resomim. Oyo li ki gati meshech shochanti im ahalei kedor. Rabbas shochno lo nafshi im soine sholem, ani sholem v'chi adaber hemel hamilchomo. Yechi adeneinu morenu v'rabbeinu melech HaMoshiach leilom voed. Yechi adeneinu morenu v'rabbeinu melech HaMoshiach leilom voed. Yechi adeneinu morenu v'rabbeinu melech HaMoshiach leilom voed. Now we're going to say the Rebetzin's kapitel. Shir lamaylois eso enai el hehorim me'ayin yove Ezri. Ezri me'im Adonai oise shomayim va'oretz. Al yiten lamot raglecho al yonum shemrecho. Hine lo yonum velo yishon shoymer Yisrael. Adonai shomrecho, Adonai tzilcho al yad minecho. Yoimem Hashemesh le yakeko ve'yoreach baloila. Adonai yishmocho mikol ro, yishmor es nafshecho, Adonai yishmor tzeizcho uve'echo me'ato ve'ad oilam. And now we're going to say a kapitel Chof for all Chelam Yisrael. B'chol mokim shehem. I would like to say a special bracha for my mother, Imi Mirosi Batze Bas Hinde, and my aunt Rivka Bas Hinde. Everybody should think of the names and the power of being together. Achdus and such a day should pale as like a refuah shleimo krevel l'chol chelam Yisrael. And the biggest refuah is the biggest sickness in the galus. We should be cured from the galus and Mashiach now. So Shir, you have the chaf here. Okay. We don't have over here also, but it's by hand. Lamnatseach mizmo leDavid. Yancho Adonai beyoim tzora. Yisagevcho Shem Elohei Yaakov. Yishlach ezrecha mikodesh umitzion yisadeko. Yischo kol minchosecho ve'oiloscho yidash neselo. Yiten lecho chilevovecho ve'cholatzoscho yemale. Neraneno bishuasecho ubeshem Eloheinu nidgoil yemale Adonai kol mishalesecho. Ato yodaiti ki hoishia adinoi meshichoi, yanehu mishmekocho bigvurois yesha yeminoi. Eile vorechev ve'eile vasusim v'anachnu b'shem adinoi Eloheinu naskir. Heimo koru v'nofolu v'anachnu kamnu v'nisoidod, adinoi hoishio hamelech yaneinu b'yom korenu. Jontef, Soros Davis,
Thank you. Before I continue, there has been lost and found. This belongs to you, a bracelet and a glove. You can come claim it. It's now a true honor to call up a dear friend of mine who has come a truly long way in this community, doing something incredible for this community and bringing something that she grew up with her own passions and bringing it in a way for a true Bas Chabad and representing young girls in this community. Really an honor to call up Mrs. Leah Raskin from Tambourines. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Hi. It's a privilege to be here tonight. Thank you to Neshei Chabad for this beautiful opportunity. When I find myself struggling with the same challenge once again, I look at it and I say, hey, you look familiar. And then I wonder, why? What is the purpose of this struggle? And why am I struggling with the same thing again? Whether it's that relationship that needs more tending to, or being patient with my kids when we're running late to school, and when finally at the door they decide that, yes, they actually do want to eat breakfast. Or those negative thoughts that bring me down on a random Tuesday morning, or making davening and learning part of my schedule, or the list goes on. And then I remember, oh, right, this world is Hashem's garden in the making. This is where He wants me to work on myself. This is the avodah He wants me to do. And this is exactly how He wants me to struggle. He doesn't want a perfect world, a struggle-less world. If He did, He would have given the Torah to the Malachim 3,300 years ago. He wants us, imperfect human beings, to tackle the physical and crass, the mundane, the hardship into something holy and beautiful with all of our imperfections. And while for years in school I heard the word and concept called avodah and knew the translation to be work, only recently did it really click. Avodah is to work. We are here to work, and it will take effort. We recently commemorated Yahrtzeit, when the Rebbe's mission statement for our generation was clear. Bring the Shekhinah into this physical world and turn it into Hashem's garden through your personal avodah. Wow, what an honor. It's inspiring to see so many girls attending Tambourines Academy apply this message to their lives through their constant effort in expressing their talents in Hasidic ways. With the Rebbe's brachas, we are able to provide a space with a Hasidic atmosphere and trained teachers where girls can work on their singing, dancing, acting, and performing skills, and to do it all with simcha. And tonight, in honor of our special Rebitzin, the girls will showcase what they've learned. As we sing the garden song tonight, composed by Ruby New, I wish upon all of us the strength and the courage that it takes to do our very unique avodah to make this world into Hashem's garden. Oftentimes, we're missing this clarity. We search for Hashem and question His ways. We can feel lost, uninspired, or even abandoned, and we yearn to feel more sure of ourselves and our mission, and perhaps more connected to our source. As we sing Tzamalecha Nafshi, I wish upon all of us that ultimate quenching of our thirst, the final geula with the coming of Mashiach now. Thank you, Rachi Segal and Sarah Gaizinski, for arranging our performance. Thank you, Musya Manshine, for choreographing. Thank you, Brielle, for your amazing vocal lessons. Thank you to all the tambourine mothers and tambourine girls, and thank you for coming tonight.
All along you were my song, my love, joy, and pride.
Thank you so much to the beautiful Tambourines girls for your performance. For those of you who are old enough to know, to remember, my husband's grandfather, great-grandfather, Zeta Yanko Lipsker, used to have a grocery store on Kingston Avenue, which later became Kahn's. They had the honor of serving the Rebbe and Rebitzin's household. One day, when my dear mother-in-law, Mrs. Bracha Richler, which used to be Raskin, her grandfather asked her and her sister Basi to make a delivery to the Rebbe and Rebitzin's home for some groceries. They were told to knock on the back door. As they stood there waiting, in awe, anticipating, they thought to themselves, who was going to answer the door? Was it going to be the Rebbe, the Rebitzin, or someone who was working in the home? They were waiting with anticipation. And suddenly the door opened and the Rebitzin was standing there. She greeted them warmly and she welcomed them in to put the groceries onto the table. My mother-in-law describes her as a petite, beautiful woman with beautiful eyes and a warm smile. She asked them about school, how old they were, what were their names. And right before they left, she said something to them that they will never forget until this day, and would be the mantra for themselves and for their families. She said, girls, remember, enjoy life. Now, you could think to yourself, wow, what is something that the Rebitzin would say? To enjoy life. Our lives can seem like they're busy. We have so many things to do. Sometimes we feel like there's chores. We have, get up, we say Maidani, wash, so many things in our day to do. But the Rebitzin said something that was an underlying message for every single day life. We can choose how to view our day, how to wake up in the morning. The Rebitzin said these words, enjoy life. Every single day, we can choose how we view it. We can choose to enjoy the small things that come our way. The small things, like saying Maida'ani, waking up and smiling to our children in the morning, or choosing just to walk past someone on the street and give them a smile. Enjoying every single little thing in life. And this story really resonated with me personally. Even before I met my husband, I heard this story, and I was like, wow, it's such a powerful message. Coming from the Rebitzin, just these few words of enjoying life, it shows a real powerful message of how we can live our everyday to-day life. And I feel like just having small things can so this is just a message from the Rebitzin that I took personally as a message for myself to enjoy every single small thing in life. I would now like to call up our next speaker, the Shlucha Yael Balaish from Israel, to give us a few words.
Hi, I'm sorry for my English, it's not very good English. I'm French and live in Israel. I am in Shlichus 7 years for French people in Netanya. And I'm a little bit nervous for my English. Before we go to Shlichus, we write in the Igrot Kodesh to ask the Rebbe about the Shlichut. And the Rebbe write to us, don't see far away every time, because when you are watch far away, you are miss the Jew people in front your eyes. They wait for you to save him. And the big actions are coming by themselves, but don't miss the Jewish people. They are waiting for you to save him. And when we have this letter, we don't understand very good what the Rebbe wants to tell to us. And where we are going to the Shlichut, Netanya, it's a big Shlichut. There is a lot of Shluchim. And the Shlichut of French people, it's very, very big Shlichut. And where you are coming, you are young Shluchim. People wait for you. That you are like Shluchim of 20 years. In the 1 year, they want a Bet Chabad and the Gan Israel and this and this and this and this. And you have the Yetzirah to think, why I'm new, I want to do something on something, but Shlichut, you have to build. I don't know if I speak, if you understand. You have to build it, and how you build Shlichut, you are watching, and they want you to talk with him, to speak with him, to listen to him, and the big action is coming by themselves. Now we are a few years in Shlichut, as we are doing a lot of big things, but there is the little Shlichut in the big Shlichut, and I want to tell you a story. They want me to tell you a story. In Rosh Hashanah, we are sick of corona after Rosh Hashanah with my husband. So in Israel, when you are of corona, you have in quarantine? No, I know, bidud. And my husband told to me, what, Kippur in bidud? What I'm going to do with the community? Because I'm the Chazan, I'm the Baal Koreh, I'm everything of the community. We have a big community, and how I can be in bidud in Kippur? It's the holiday and the Chag. It's bigger of the year. Why I now in the house? And he was sad, triste. And I told to him, okay, if it's like this, as Hashem wants to us to be in bidud in our house, and you don't go to the shul because the police is come, it's 5,000 shekel. You don't go to the shul. And when we were at home, we have a neighborhood in the second floor. We are living in the third floor. They was with us in Rosh Hashanah. So the son of the people have corona too, like us. And my husband is tell to him, come to pray with me because I'm alone, you are alone. So come with me and we are praying together. And he's 18 years old in the army. So he's come to the morning, he's doing tefillah with my husband. My husband was happy that he is here. He showed him, you pray like that, and you make this, and we make this. And after Kippur, he come and he told to my husband, it was my best Kippur all of my life. And my husband saw him and like, what? And he said, yes, I'm coming to the shul, but I don't know how to pray. There is never a Kippur that I pray. I going to the Beit Knesset, and I waiting, I pray a little bit, and now it's my first Kippur that I pray. And for me, it's changed it changed a lot of things in myself. And after that, my husband tell me, that's why we have to be here in Kippur and not in the community. For him, now Hashem sent to us to see why it's like that. And one of subject of the Kinus this year, it was this: you are in the place that you have to be. You are in the right place that you have to be. I tell you the truth. I don't know that the event is big like that. But I want to tell another story. So, in our Shlichus, we are feel the Rebbe all the time. And I tell the truth, I feel the Rebbe more in the Shlichus, little Shlichus with people, than a bigger thing that we are doing. Because the bigger thing we are doing, it's for happiness, the people. Chanukah, Purim, these people are happy. But people need us to be with him in their problems and life. And 1 month ago, we lost someone of our community, dad of mishpacha, of a family, 40 years old, of the Machala and the Chabad of Shiva. I very close to his wife, and I going to the Shiva, and I think in the Yom Shishi what I going to tell them, because I'm going to there, and they wait for me to make a shiur, to make what I can told to them. So I think, I search something. I'm going to search something. I take my book and I open in the parasha of the Shavua, Sichot Shel Rabbi. And what is the subject of the Sicha Shel Rabbi in the book? Where is God when you are suffering? I put it, and all my body is like I don't have to search something to tell. The Rabbi is here with me in the Shlichut, and he give me what to tell to the family. What to tell. Now you are suffering, and see, the Rabbi is here with you, and he wants to tell you that, because what I'm telling is not what I'm telling, is what the Rebbe are telling in the Sikha. So I come to the house and I show her the book. I show her, I don't search something. It's the parasha of this week. See what the rabbi wants you to know, that you are suffering and Hashem is with you right now in your suffering. So thank you very much for inviting me. It's a big honor for me. And remember that what the rabbi tells us is the motor of our Shlichus. Don't see far away, because when you are seeing very far away, you missed the people right here. They want you to save them. Thank you very much.
Rebitzin Chaya Mushka Schneerson was born in Bobanovich, near the town of Lubavitch, in Belarus, in 1901. Upon her birth, her grandfather, the fifth Rebbe, chose a name for her. Telegraphing from abroad, if she hasn't been named yet, she should be called Chaya Mushka. Her childhood was spent at the seat of the Lubavitch movement, as the granddaughter and daughter of generations of the revered Rabbis of Chabad. When leadership of the movement was placed upon her father's shoulders, he became the target of continuous threats by the communist regime. With uncertainty hanging over him, he entrusted his middle daughter with the power to conduct all legal transactions on his behalf. In 1927, when the secret police showed up to arrest her father, she ran to the window and called out to her future husband, "Schneerson, guests have arrived," thereby saving him from their clutches and setting in motion a plan to save the movement's priceless manuscripts. When her father's death sentence was commuted to exile, it was Chaya Mushka who accompanied him on the lonely journey. A year later, the young woman who was nurtured on the knees of great Rebbes and Rebitzins married the person who would become Rebbe himself. The couple settled in Berlin, where they maintained a decidedly non-public life, suiting both of their modest personas. In 1933, they fled to Paris. The Rebitzin would reflect fondly upon this period. When the Nazis were approaching France several years later, they were compelled to flee again. Their journey ended a year and a half later when they reached New York. The Rebitzin, with her husband, had arrived to the side of her esteemed father. As people began to take note of the reserved young man who had been appointed to lead Lubavitch's central organizations, his wife continually tried to conceal her regal bearing. Many a store on Kingston Avenue would receive a phone call for a delivery, only to notice at the end that it was Mrs. Schneerson from President Street. In 1950, her father passed away, and the mantle of leadership transferred to her husband. As the Rebbe toiled around the clock, she remained a steadfast pillar of support behind the scenes, but never wavering for a moment. For decades on end, as the world came knocking on his door, demanding more and more of his time and attention, the Rebitzin stood in the wings, supporting, and wherever possible, assisting. When the movement and her husband faced a critical challenge on the nature of a Rebbe, she summed up her own life experience, declaring, "The Rebbe and everything he owns belongs to Hasidim." Presented here is the testimony of several of those who knew, or at least observed the Rebitzin up close, collected as part of the My Encounter with the Rebbe project. Because of her modesty, it is difficult to learn about her life. To this day, those who knew her are still wary of breaching her privacy in some way. Many of our interviewees would not share experiences they considered too personal. So discreet was she that for many, it was only when they observed the Rebbe after her passing that they realized what she meant to him. From that day in 1988, on his visits to the resting place of his father-in-law, the Rebbe would often spend a few moments in prayer at her resting place as well. Today, thousands of Jewish women and girls proudly bear her name. The Rebbe and Rebitzin had been a source of blessing for so many, but sadly, they were not to have children of their own. A young boy once visited the Rebitzin's home and naively asked her, "Rebitzin, where are your children?" The Rebitzin responded, "All Hasidim are the Rebbe's children."
Thank you, Mrs. Balaish, for your words. Would now like to call upon Mrs. Malky Ruddle from Newcastle, Australia, to share some words of inspiration. There's also seats here. If anybody from the back would like to take a seat, there's plenty of seats here.
All right, into the mic. Good evening, Crown Heights. Of all the things I never ever thought I would do, standing up here speaking to Nashia of Crown Heights, I am honored. I feel compelled to start by collectively thanking the ladies and girls of Crown Heights for your incredible hospitality, for all the Shlichus over this amazing weekend. I'm sorry about the extra long lines and sweet expressions. So me, I'm a regular Aussie girl, nothing too special about me, but suddenly found myself doing extraordinary things, namely Shlichus. I scored the best of the best in my husband, Yossi Ruddle. Hi, Yas. And he's in Australia with our 3 kids. Thank you. And together we embarked on the adventure of a lifetime, not trekking across Asia, not backpacking through Europe. Could have been nice. Instead, we moved to Australia on a very unconventional shlichus with Chabad of Rara. And to explain it really simply, we became America's shlichus Bachrim, but with a baby, and obviously I'm not a Bachar, right? But that's what we did. We spent a large chunk of the year on the road. We traveled the dusty rural roads and little towns. Sounds so romantic. It's pretty intense. And the idea was to search for all those shining souls that are scattered all around. In our bright-colored yellow Rara tank, we brought the love and the light of Yiddishkeit to people, many of whom had missed it for years or never experienced it before. And it felt like, you know, the idea of l'chshaya futza ma'inasecha chutza, right? Taking the well springs of Chassidus to the furthest corners. We were like going to the chutza of the chutza of the chutza, down in Australia to the furthest parts. My life was a string of, I cannot believe we are doing this. bathing my babies in a sink in like a mall and we basically had no home and the kids needed to go to sleep. You know, stuff like that, baking challahs in a random person's house and realizing afterwards that she had terrible OCD and my mess was just too overwhelming. Driving tens of hours to visit a Jew only to realize that he really wasn't interested and trying to find the positive in that. And then we had an opportunity that seemed like it was going to top it all off. Something I never ever thought I would do. Not as much as speaking in Crown Heights, but almost. We were approached by a filmmaker to make a documentary about our Shlichus. It's called the Outback Rabbis. Anyone seen it? For 2 weeks, they followed us around as we drove the Rara tank. We lived in it, by the way. They don't show that bit. 4 of us, and whatever. We drove from Melbourne through the red, dusty center of Australia. Our destination was Uluru, literally the middle of Australia. And the end result might look really glam, but it really wasn't. Filming is a daily grind of sound checks and can you redo that walk and can you just stop there and turn this way? It's kind of hard to do shlichus when, you know, you're being directed by somebody else. We're trying to juggle the kids, you know, like everyone's watching, can we just behave ourselves? But for 2 weeks it kind of gets old really fast for them. And all the while trying to give really smart answers to really hard questions like, why do you cover your hair? Or what does it mean to believe in God? And like the kids are like in 3 directions and the sound check guy is like, speak up. And, you know, the whole thing was intimidating. And we were traveling to a really, really remote, the whole route was really remote. So Melbourne has lots of people, but as you drive further and further towards the center, there's less and less people. And the less people there are, the less likely there is to be Jewish people, right? It's just like a numbers game. And the chances of finding a Jew was low, but it wasn't impossible. And that's always been our motto. Every Jew is important no matter how far they are. And we were proving that. We drove on day after day, Yossi and I and our 2 little boys in that yellow Rara tank. Long days, no Jews, day after day. By the time we made to Alice Springs, which is the most central town in the middle of Australia, we were exhausted, we were depleted, we were thousands of miles away from home, and we still hadn't met a Jew. And I'm usually an optimistic person, but I was really doubting. I was doubting whether this was a good idea, were we wasting our time, were we just broadcasting to the entire world that we're failures at Shlichus? It was kind of getting embarrassing. To make everything a whole lot harder, my beloved father-in-law, Rabbi Menachem Rodel Oliver Shalom, had recently passed away at that point, and the Mesiras Nefesh stakes were really high for this trip. Every day of not finding Jews was a day of missing Kaddish for my husband that was excruciating. But lucky for us, we had an inbuilt Jew. The producer was Jewish. Thank you so much. Thanks. Ooh, that's better. The producer was Jewish, didn't believe in tefillin, didn't believe in shlichus, but thought it'd make a good movie, so that's why he was there. And my husband and him struck a deal. Any day that we didn't find any Jews, because remember, he chose the route, his fault. Any day we didn't find Jews, he would put on tefillin. I think at day 8, he started to regret it. He had never put on tefillin so many days in a row in his life. But here we are, arriving in Alice Springs. We're exhausted, we're far from home, we're depleted, and honestly, I was feeling really stupid. Why hadn't we insisted on going up the eastern coast of Australia? Tons of Jews, lots happening, we know the people there. It'd be great TV, in my opinion. No one asked me. What is going on here? And despite the fact that we had arrived really late, the kids were restless, we were tired, the producer's like, 9 a.m. tomorrow morning, see you then. It was like after midnight when we arrived. It was the first time in 6 days that we had been in a town big enough to have a supermarket. We needed some supplies. No worries, love. Just make sure you do it before 9 a.m. We need you filming. So I was grumpy that morning. To be honest, I was not happy. We got up early. We're running around. The tank needed gas, petrol, right? We went to the wrong place because Google Maps is not so updated there. The guy at the gas station was more updated and gave us directions across the other side of town. It was a mess. We finally made it to Target 8 minutes before 9 a.m. We had a bunch of stuff that we needed. We had 8 minutes. And so we're walking into Target down the walkway, and I hear like a commotion behind me. Someone's talking, someone's yelling. I turn around just in time to see this woman barrel into my husband in a massive bear hug, and I'm just like, what is going on? And he's like, and she backs off and she's like, I'm so sorry. I know I'm not supposed to hug a rabbi. I can't believe this. You're here for me. And we're like, sorry? Are you all right? She took a couple of deep breaths, enough to tell us her story. She said, I grew up in Sydney, which is a Jewish-ish area. She knew she was Jewish, but didn't know anything else. She got married and moved to Saudi Arabia, and there realized that she really was missing something and her soul was yearning. When her husband said, I'm done with Saudi Arabia, let's move back to Australia, she was thrilled. Except Australia was central Australia, where she was even further, far from Yiddishkeit, far from friends, far from family, and she was really, really lonely. She was sad, she was isolated, and she started to understand this yearning for more. The weeks turned into months, and she started to worry and think, maybe I don't even matter. After all, I'm not a practicing Jew. Maybe God doesn't care. The night before had been difficult. Her husband worked long hours. Her son is young and needy. She has no support. And in a moment of desperation that night, she whispered in the night, God, do you hear me? Do I even matter? And then she got her answer the next morning. She woke up, her child was crabby, they were late, he was late, and she was like, yeah, I don't matter. Okay, no one cares, no one's out there. She closes the gate to her daycare, looks up across at Target, and sees a rabbi. Oh my gosh. That's when she starts screaming and waving because the rabbi's walking away, and she's like, hello, you're here for me. God sent you to me. We shared another hug, this time with me, and a few tears. And later that day, we went to her home. I taught her about Shabbos candles. My children shared a book of theirs for her son. And it was a really, really special experience. This is why we were here. This is why we were late. This is where Hashem wanted us to be. And my husband was right, because as I was complaining in the morning, he said, Shlichus isn't about us. It's about standing up and doing the Rebbe's work. We're here to do the work. And when we connect to that higher potential, that's all that matters. Hashem's guiding us. This is where we're supposed to be. And didn't we see it? Except, none of that encounter was caught on film. Remember, it was 8 minutes to 9. The film crew showed up at 9. And so here was this encounter, the thing they had been waiting for, and none of it was on film. And the fact that it wasn't on film, first of all, gives me a good story to tell. If it was on the film, I wouldn't be able to tell it. You'd all have seen it already. But the other thing is a very, very special lesson, and that is that it's not about you. There's something bigger. The Rebbe has a vision, and we get to be a part of that. And I'm not going to stand here in a room full of people and tell stories of the Rebitzin. I'm sure some of you are even in those stories, but that's not my thing to tell. But what I can tell is the inspiration that I gained from her. So often we dig deep and search for those little anecdotes of people who can share something about the Rebitzin. But why? Because she was the Rebbe's greatest fan. She was the most dedicated chassid, and there was so much we can learn from her. But the biggest thing that I learned from her is the fact that we don't know much about her at all. That is the most inspiring thing of all. Because at times the greatest work and the strongest impacts are done in the background, away from the public eye, when the cameras aren't rolling. The extra learning that you do even when you're tired, the Yahrtzeit that you do even when no one wants to take your candles, the everyday grind of raising Hasidic kids that sometimes just feels like so much. But when I'm in the trenches with my Shlichus, I think of our Rebitzin. Her power was in the quiet dedication to the Rebbe, doing incredibly hard things with little to no recognition for it. Just because it's not the story that will be published on COL, or maybe your efforts won't be seen by anyone else, besides a 2-year-old, but he doesn't care, right? Know that your efforts are bringing Mashiach. You're showing up, you're doing it right, day after day. Specifically those things that seem to be miles of road with nothing happening. You never know where or what, you'll have your penny story. And that is the furthest corners of chutzah, those hidden corners in your home or in your shlichus that need the light. A year and a half ago, as COVID began to rise, we made a big move. One of the cities that we had continued to visit over the past 6 years had grown large enough for us to move there on a permanent basis. And it was good timing, because when you have one kid and you come to visit people, it's really cute, people love it. When you have 2, they sort of put up with it. When you have 3, they don't let you in the door. It's a bit much. And so it was time for us to settle down. We packed up, we moved to Newcastle, Australia, and I'd love to say that it's been a fairy tale, but it hasn't. And the power of the Rebitzin continues to power me through. Sorry, I'm so nervous. She faced incredible personal hardship through her life, but her dedication to the Rebbe never wavered. Their joint mission to change the world was never put aside, even when the going got tough. And her feminine spirit of power in private pushes me too, in my personal hardships, in my hardest days. My focus in that mission is strong. Even on the days when no one sees it, when it feels like it's not going anywhere. The Rebitzin gave us her all when she gave us the Rebbe. I can give her my best in return. It can't just be the showy events and the impressive numbers. It's my everyday best, my challenging days best, my pushing myself beyond my limits best. Do I have 5 minutes? Yes. This part is in brackets, parentheses. I have 5 minutes, let's do it. I would love some more water, thank you. This is actually in double parentheses. Do I have enough time and do I want to say this? My life is one long string of Hashgacha Pratis stories, and I feel like there's so much Hashgacha Pratis about me standing here, so let's just go for it. Sorry if I cry. Whew. 8 weeks ago on Erev Chanukah, our sweet baby boy died in utero at 22 weeks. We went from finalizing our Chanukah events to scheduling an induction for a stillborn. As I breathed through the contractions, my heart and soul was crushed. Thank you. Thanks. The pain of our loss was amplified by the lost opportunities to do what we were here in Newcastle to do, to spread light. No longer could we do our Chanukah Mivtzayim and our fancy parties that we'd planned. We were consumed by our own darkness. And yet, Yisrael ha'ar min ha'chayshach. the greatest light comes through darkness. And my husband and I told each other that as we lit the first Hanukkah candle, hours after giving birth, not to a baby to cherish, but a soul to be freed. He was not ours to keep. He was a gift to return to our Maker. But in amongst all this pain, I wanted there to be light. I told my husband, how can we just cancel the whole Hanukkah like on top of everything else? And he was like, I agree, but we have a lot going on. Are you okay? I told you I got a good one. And we found a compromise that worked. And I'm just going to stop for a second and make an important disclaimer that this is what worked for us in that moment, on that day. That's what we wanted. This is not a lesson of do this in your life or everyone must do this. This is what I found healing, we found we wanted. So, the day after I got home from hospital, we found helpers to take on a couple of events. We canceled a couple of events by Menorah Martinis. I was really excited to do that. But one event that we felt that we needed to do in person was our public menorah lighting. COVID's still a thing in Australia. We didn't know how many people would show up, but it felt so meaningful to me, sharing the 8 lights of Hanukkah. The whole story of Hanukkah is about kasis l'ma'ar, crushed in order to give light. It was something that I wanted. By then I had flown home to Melbourne to heal in the arms of my family. But Yossi returned to Newcastle for the day to do our public menorah lighting. And he pulled it all together on his own. Like, I'm the party planner here, right? And he did it all on his own, logistics, the food, the setup. He even humored me and took the gorgeous decor that I had bought and put it out. Did a pretty good job. I was impressed. And an incredible 150 people showed up, which for Newcastle is insane. Back in Melbourne, not gonna lie, I cried the entire 24 hours he was gone. I'm not really a crier, but whew, there were a lot of tears. It was so hard that he was gone. Obviously, on a personal level, it's a lot to go through, but even more so, that was my place in the crowd. As the shlucha, I was supposed to be there, but I wasn't supposed to be there. That day, my place was behind the scenes, maintaining that solid dedication to our cause by caring for myself and facilitating for my husband to be there. And I thought of the Rebitzin all that day, the ultimate shlucha who achieved more in her being than in her doing. Behind the scenes, supporting, uplifting. Rebitzin, you get me, I whispered. Give me your strength. So, whether you're traveling the dusty roads of the Outback or right here in Crown Heights, what matters most is that we are doing what the Mashaleach asked of us. Whether it's in the public eye or behind closed doors, with a quiet but focused dedication of our dear Rebitzin. Thank you.
That was so beautiful, Malki. Wow. You really touched us all with your words, really deep inside, and your message really resonated with me, and I'm sure with so many of you. It's an honor to call upon Mrs. Chana Leah Nunes, who will be sharing her beautiful talent in playing music and negonim. You can all join along.
Good evening, everyone. I'm not going to be singing tonight, but I'll just play a few little tunes, and I know we have another speaker that's up next.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. Thank you. It's an honor to now call upon a dear shlocha all the way from Palm Beach, Florida, Mrs. Chani Vigler. Welcome.
All right, I'm going to put this down here. Thank you. Thank you. When we first moved to Palm Beach Gardens, I really struggled with my identity. My husband was the rabbi, so naturally, people called me the Rebitzin. I was 21 years old, and it really didn't sit well with me. So when people would walk into shul, I'd say, "Hi, I'm Chana. I'm the rabbi's wife." But within a short time, I realized that while I certainly was the rabbi's wife, and I'm so proud of that, that isn't the sum total of my identity. I realized that they were seeing something in me that I didn't see in me. And that was that my husband wasn't the leader of the community on his own, but that we both were, and that we functioned as a team. And yes, just as he was the rabbi, I was the Rebitzin. So now, I changed my tune. When people would walk into shul, I'd say, "Hi, I'm Chana. I'm the Rebitzin." It didn't take long before they started calling me Rebitzin Chana. And that's where I drew the line. Rebitzin, yes. Rebitzin Chana, not so much. The title Rebitzin is a huge responsibility to carry. And while it took me time to get comfortable with it, it really wasn't something new. It was who I always was, and truly, it is who every single one of us is. I need to move this back a little bit so I can see my notes. We are royalty, and we are blessed beyond measure that we have been given incredible role models to show us what Malchus looks like. I wanted to break it down. I wanted to define what royalty is, so I looked it up. Webster says, a person of royal lineage, member of a royal family. That's us. Ashreinu. How fortunate we are to be Yidden, to be Chassidim, to be the Rebbe's Chassidim. But that's royalty. What's Malchus? Malchus is the union of two worlds. A Jewish king is the example of wealth and honor and respect, simultaneously being the embodiment of humility, constantly aware that he is nothing in the face of the King of Kings. For this reason, David HaMelech, the epitome of human nobility, describes himself as poor and needy. Even though he came from the wealthiest, most notable of families, he considered himself poor. Just as a pauper has nothing and relies on the generosity of others, David HaMelech realized that his whole majesty was truly an undeserved gift from Hashem. So, the definition of Malchus then is to be royalty while simultaneously remaining humble and always remembering that we are merely extensions of Hashem. The greatest secular leaders of our times, the presidents, prime ministers, kings and queens that shaped the course of societies, served their countries or nations as a means of gaining power and wanting to make a difference in the world. Our Jewish leaders, on the other hand, were always running away from power, starting with Moshe, who argued with Hashem for a whole week before accepting to take on the mission of leading the Jewish people out of Mitzrayim. And we all know how long it took the Rebbe to accept the mantle of leadership. We know the humility which our Rebbe led us throughout his leadership. He was there just to care about every single Yid and give us a tremendous sense of self-worth. The Rebitzin, too, wasn't just a supporting role to the Rebbe. She was the inner voice of femininity and intuition that, while not seen, was felt by every person who came in contact with the Rebbe. And this, in and of itself, is what made and continues to make the Rebitzin the influential leader that she was. We now know that it was the Rebitzin who encouraged and insisted that the Rebbe assume the leadership as to continue the mission of her father. This is Malchus. She understood her role so well to the extent that we had absolutely no idea what an important role she played until after Chaf Beis Shvat and the Rebbe disclosed what a partner she was to him. The Rebbe may have been the one on the forefront, but it is evident that all that he was and all that he did was because of her. She did what needed to be done without any fanfare. It was around Yud Shvat in the early 70s, in the dead of winter. My grandfather, Rabbi Krinsky, one of the Rebbe's secretaries, had something very heavy in the car. And when he went to the car and lifted this heavy package, he pulled something in his back. The pain in his back was so severe that for the first time in over 10 years, he actually couldn't go into the office. That evening, while he was sitting at the dinner table with his family, the phone rang, and it was the Rebitzin. She wanted to know how he was. And after making some small talk, the Rebitzin said, "No, really, how are you?" Finally, my grandfather told her what happened, that he got this terrible pain in his back, and he was having trouble finding a doctor. The Rebitzin reminded him that a year before, she had some pain in her back, and that he had taken her to a particular doctor in New Jersey. She said that she was going to call the doctor and make an appointment, and she was going to take him the next day to the doctor. My grandfather agreed for her to make the appointment, but said he would be the one to drive, if that would be okay. And indeed, she did. She went with him. And while the doctor was treating him in the room, the Rebitzin waited in the lobby like a mother who waits for her child. A couple hours later, my grandfather was back in 770, and just a couple minutes after he came back in, the Rebbe buzzed him to come into his office. My grandfather came into the Rebbe's room, and the Rebbe's standing and smiling, and he said, "Nu, how did it go? What did the doctor say?" So my Zaidi said, "The doctor said that I need to walk straight." And the Rebbe made a big smile, and he said, "Ich teine schon lang, as man darf gehen b'derech hayashar." I've been saying all along that we must walk in the straight path. This is Malchus. This was our Rebbe and Rebitzin. Our leaders cared about another Yid being in physical pain. My Zaidi remembers the first time that he met the Rebitzin. He was a young boy of 12. And at the time, the Frierdiker Rebbe wasn't well, and he used to farbring upstairs in his room. And it wasn't a very big room, and also because the Friedrich Rebbe wasn't well, they didn't allow a lot of people in the room. And my grandfather used to go and stand out there hoping that somebody would take pity on him and let him go inside. Usually, nobody looked his way. One day, the door opened. The Rebitzin Chaya Mushka appeared. She looked at him and said, "Geh herein, go inside." And she motioned for him to go inside. Later, my Zaidi would describe that moment as being of the most special of his life. He didn't understand a word the Friedrich Rebbe was saying, but the atmosphere in the room is still clear in his mind today. To be so up close to the Rebbe with only 20 people around the table. This is Malchus. To notice a little boy, not even bar mitzvah, who so desperately wanted to see his Rebbe and granted him the ability to do so. And this is something that every single one of us is capable of doing. Opening our eyes, and more importantly, opening our hearts to the needs of others. When I was about a year old, my parents took my brother and me to visit the Rebitzin. My mother had dressed me in a beautiful Italian outfit, this beautiful sweater. And when we came inside, the Rebitzin handed us lollipops. Well, she handed me a lollipop. I think my brother was a little too young. He was only a few months old. And it was a very colorful lollipop. And as I ate that lollipop, it all dripped all over my beautiful sweater. And my mother just looked at that sweater and said, "Well, it's from the Rebitzin. It's a lolly from the Rebitzin." This is Malchus. Despite being an elderly woman, knowing that children were coming to visit, she made sure to have lollipops in her house. My bubby used to have a dress shop on Kingston Avenue. And the Rebitzin wanted to buy some dresses for her niece in Eretz Yisrael. But my grandmother didn't think it was bekavadik for the Rebitzin to go to the store. But she knew that my mother would be more than happy to go. Incidentally, as close of a relationship my Zaidi had with the Rebitzin, my bubby never met the Rebitzin. She was way too humble and didn't want to take any of the Rebitzin's time. My mother happily took the dresses to the Rebitzin's house. When she came inside, before she went inside, my father said to her, my father drove her, and my father said, "Go in and out. We don't waste any of the Rebitzin's time." So she went inside, gave the Rebitzin the dresses, and the Rebitzin asked her if she came by herself. "Yahrtzeit gekommen allein? Did you come by yourself?" So my mother said, No, my man wart for me in car. My husband is waiting for me in the car. The Rebitzin said, "A man lässt man nicht warten." We don't let a husband wait. But my mother was so excited to be by the Rebitzin. She said, Nein, kann warten. It's okay, he can wait. So the Rebitzin repeated, "Nein, a man lässt man nicht warten. Aber nächste Mal sollt ihr sagen, als soll echt reinkommen und ich will euch da verhalten." Next time, tell him that he should also come inside with you, and I'm going to keep you here for a while. This is Malchus, wanting people to feel comfortable in her home without the slightest feeling of anyone being inferior to her or wasting her time. Later, when my mother came to pick up the clothes that the Rebitzin was returning a couple weeks later, the Rebitzin apologized for having held the dresses for such a long time, knowing that if she was holding these dresses that she wasn't going to purchase, then the store owner couldn't make a sale, and she felt bad, and she apologized for having held them for so long. My mother looked at her and said, "Lehefech, for mein Schwieger, is a große kavod. For my mother-in-law, it's a big kavod for the Rebitzin to have the dresses." And the Rebitzin responded, "Kavod shmavid, Business is business. Indeed, this defines Malchus, being the queen, yet being keenly aware of others and never seeking extra attention, or as the way she put it, kavod shmavod. On another occasion, when my mother returned to bring more dresses, the Rebitzin looked her in the eye and said, "Sagt mir, ihr seid zufrieden? Tell me, are you happy?" My mother was shocked by the question because my parents had been married for quite some time, and she was feeling down that she had not yet become pregnant. But this wasn't anything she had discussed with anybody. And my mother assured her, yeah, ich bin zufrieden. Yes, I'm happy. But the Rebitzin sensed a certain sadness in my mother's eyes and wasn't satisfied, repeating again, "Aber sagt mir, but tell me, ihr seid zufrieden? Are you happy?" As badly as my mother wanted to share her pain with the Rebitzin, she just couldn't get the words out. Obviously, the Rebitzin didn't press further, but my mother did feel a sense of having been heard and having been seen, as they say today, right? She felt that somebody cared for her pain and felt her pain. This was our Rebitzin. This is leadership. A woman who suffered from being childless herself and was in tune with that kind of pain. True greatness does not lie in how much one accomplishes. True greatness lies in how one reacts to the life we were given. Our Rebitzin had a lot of pain in her life. She was coming from the Holocaust, where some of her family members perished, including her beloved younger sister. She gave up all her time that she could have spent with her husband so that he can reach out and impact the world as we know it, sending thousands of shluchim around the globe, something that was completely unprecedented. And she never had children. Yet, our Rebitzin didn't suffer. Our Rebitzin wasn't alone. And this is clearly seen in how she was able to connect with people around her. To every person she came in contact with, she became in tune with their needs and listened to them. She understood us better than we understood ourselves. She felt the pain in a woman's eyes and knew what it was about. She saw a little boy standing in the hallway of her father's room and knew that all he wanted was to go in and see his Rebbe and be in the presence of the Rebbe. She sensed the feeling of uncomfortability of someone being in her home and addressed it in order to make her feel comfortable. She didn't have any biological children, and yet she was the mother of thousands. As women, we have a built-in intuition, and in this way, we can emulate our Rebitzin by discovering what already lies inside of us. To be a good listener, to empathize and feel for other people, to be non-judgmental in our assumptions about others and in ourselves, to be kind, to find the beauty and the subtlety of femininity. Indeed, to support our husbands like the Rebitzin supported the Rebbe in his every endeavor, which ensured the success of disseminating his teachings far and wide for thousands of Chabad houses across the world, and of course, Kan Siva, here in our beloved Crown Heights, a community that truly looks out for one another. We remember the Rebitzin when we show care and compassion like she did, immediately without deliberating when the opportunities present themselves, comforting a frightened child, mending a broken heart, giving tzedakah when we need to dig deep, being patient and forgiving with the people we are living with, delivering a nourishing home-cooked meal with love. It is with these kindnesses that we create an active remembrance of our dear Rebitzin. The Arizal tells us that while it was Moshe that led us out of Mitzrayim, in his complete humility and straight connection to Hashem, the only reason and essential factor to us leaving were the women and the incredible emunah that they had. This ability to experience pain and simultaneously not to suffer. To use everything in one's life as a learning mechanism to grow and become in tune with other people's challenges. It is this quality that took the Yidden out of Galus Mitzrayim, and it is this same quality that will take us out of this Galus and into the Geula with Mashiach. Recently, a young girl turned to the former chief rabbi of Eretz Yisrael with a serious concern of hers. I have no self-confidence, she said. Soon, I'm going to celebrate my bas mitzvah, and I don't have the courage to speak and bless in front of others. I know that you speak in front of the whole country and the entire world with enormous confidence. Could I possibly ask you for your advice for building self-confidence? Rabbi Lau responded to her, tell this to yourself. I will get up and say what I have to say, because it's not just me who is speaking. Rather, generations with an eternal message are speaking through me. Generations that didn't exchange one ideology for another, but remained faithful. And here we are, alive and well. This thought has given me the confidence to speak with the Pope, with Fidel Castro, with the rulers of the former Soviet Union and the United States. And perhaps it will give you the confidence to deliver your bas mitzvah speech. We all have something to say to the world. As Neshei Chabad, we have an obligation to exemplify Malchus. Let's not be shy or timid to represent. On Yud Tes Shvat, Tafshin Memches, my father answered the phone in the office, in my grandfather's office in 770. And the Rebitzin was on the line. After a few minutes, she asked, Was macht der Olam? Loosely translated as, how's the crowd doing? My father was a little confused as to what the Rebitzin was talking about, thinking she probably meant the Bachram in 770. And he just took a moment before he answered, and she quickly added, Ich mein de babies. I mean the babies. She was talking about the babies at home. My mother had given birth to her 5th child in 4 years, only a few weeks before, and the Rebitzin was concerned and checking in. This was only 4 days before Chaf Beis Shvat. The Rebitzin never missed an opportunity to show care and concern for others. This is Malchus. Sometimes, when I walk to shul, I imagine myself wearing an invisible crown. It helps me stand a little taller, walk a little straighter. I realize that so long as I am aware of the royalty invested in me, I have the power to affect those around me. Indeed, we are all Malchus. Each one of us individually and all of us united can affect real change, one person at a time. I know this is true. The Rebitzin showed us. Thank you.
Wow, Mrs. Bigler, that was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing the Rebitzin with us in such a great light. And right now, we have these Living with Mashiach booklets outside. You'll be seeing them on your way out. And And thank you all so much for coming out on this evening. We'd like to say a l'chaim to everybody, wishing you all the brachos, and you wish each other brachos to those who are sitting around, and a good Yom Tov. L'chaim. Now be hearing some more music of singing and dancing.